Hi everyone, here's a quick run through of how I would use my adjustable mannequin to create a character concept fairly quickly. You could easily use this to create sculpts or models for 3D printing, or to use as a base mesh that you would then retopologize. To start off, I'll just set up my camera and drag in a reference image. So in this case I have Elsa, and I'm just going to start pushing and pulling the rig until it's roughly in place. All I'm trying to do here is just match the angle and placement of the limbs. Elsa has a fairly normal body type, so it's quite easy to create her using the mannequin and sliders, but afterwards we'll look at a slightly more difficult character. As I'm playing with the rig, I'm going back and forth to the menu and playing with the sliders to see if I can get the proportions any closer to the reference. For now, I've taken the model as far as I can with just the rig and the sliders, so now I want to remove the shape keys so I can modify the mesh further. To do this, go to the shape keys section and you'll see here that all of the shape keys are colored purple, which means that they are being controlled by drivers, in this case the different sliders. In here, I can create a new shape from mix. This will take all of our shape key changes and combine them all into one new key. Turn this new key up to 1 and you'll see that it exaggerates all of the changes that I've made because it's essentially doubling the number of adjustments. Now all you need to do is select the second last key, in this case head style, and just click the minus button until you don't have any more shape keys. Now if we go to edit mode, you'll see that all of the shape keys have been applied and we have some actual geometry that we can play with. So now I'm just going to do a bit more editing to match the reference exactly. Elsa has a fairly thin torso, so I just need to make that a bit smaller and then we're done. At this point we still have the rig, so we can move the character into a T-pose, and now you have a nice base character to start sculpting or retopologizing. In my case, I want this to be a sculpted model, so I'm going to apply the armature and delete it. Before sculpting, we want the mesh to be all one piece, so we need to remesh the model. The easiest way to remesh is by selecting the model in object mode and going to the Object Data tab where you found the shape keys. Underneath that, you'll see a remesh section, and all you need to do is click remesh. Depending on your model, you might need to change the voxel size. In my case, I don't want to lose too much of the detail on the hands, so I'll lower the value until the hands are still intact. Now I have a fully solid model and I can start sculpting. All I do in this case is just smooth out all of the seams by pressing shift and then building it back up by using the inflate brush. I'm just going to go around the entire model and do this process until all of the joints are gone. I won't take this model any further, but you can get the general gist of things. From here, it would just be a lot of sculpting and refining, but within a couple of minutes you can easily get to a decent base mesh by using the adjustable mannequin. Next we'll do a slightly more difficult character, Jack Skellington. Obviously Jack has very long and thin limbs, but that's not too much of a problem. To start off, I line up my reference trying to match the torso as best I can. After that, I grab the feet and put them in place. This does stretch out the legs and it also scales them up, but we can fix that later. Then I do the same things for the arms, just moving the hands into place trying to match the scale. The arms and legs are set up using an IK rig, so by default when moving the hands or feet, the limbs will just stretch. So to get the bends in the arms, I just need to scale up the upper arm bone until I get the bend that I want. I also don't like using poles when using IK rigs, so to rotate the arms, I just rotate the upper arm bone in place. I find it much easier than trying to track down a pole bone in a complex rig. When I get the proportions in place, I once again apply the shape key changes and then go about fixing the scale of the limbs. All I'm doing here is just scaling the tops and bottoms of the legs and moving them into place. I also then shrink the middle of the limbs using Alt-S. I prefer scaling the ends as shrinking can cause some strange problems. I just keep doing this same process the whole way around the model until the limbs match the reference. Once they do, I can now get the model into a T-pose, and from here I could start doing more sculpting and designing because I know that the proportions of the character match the reference. So one quick tip, if you want to have multiple characters in your scene, you'll need to duplicate both the rig and the mesh, and then you'll have two completely separate rigs that you can play with independently. Also, when you change the head style, you'll see that the black lines from the mannequin head are now all over the face, so to get rid of them, you just need to go to the Materials tab and delete the black material. Lastly, if you want to create some more fantasy style characters that have multiple limbs, you can easily do this by duplicating the rig and mesh, deleting the parts of the body that you don't need, and then just moving the extra limbs into place. Now you have two separate rigs, but for this kind of thing you would probably want to go back later and create a custom rig with all of the controls that you need. So I hope that wasn't too much info, but hopefully now you understand how to use the mannequin, and I hope it helps with whatever characters you do in the future. Anyway, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.